Advertising is only a short-term strategy.
But if you're not providing the right message, even being on the top of the page, it's not going to give you any results or any clicks.
Success is measured in different ways, right? And that can always be seen in the data. Where
It's that time. It's another episode of the Challengtunity podcast. I'm Chris Lawson, your host. As usual, I am joined by my co-host who thinks 1 to 3 friends is sufficient, Jordan Woolf. Jordan, how are you doing? Where is Jordan Woolf? Why are you hiding? Those of which you were listening don't know what I'm talking about. You were hiding on video. Boo, there he is. Well, Jordan, we have, a very unique episode today. We recorded an episode earlier in the day with 2 individuals from the ATRIUM team who are online advertising specialists. Fantastic at their roles. And the entire episode was talking about online advertising. How did you think it went? What was your take on it?
We're slowly clawing our way through our team of very passionate specialists to claw them into our weird side project here at the Challengtunity podcast. But I think, like most people on our team, it's something that they're very aware that we're doing this, and we get to talk all the time about stuff, and I think they're very eager to do the same. So it was awesome to hear different perspectives. In this case, they're both in the same role, but you have 2 different people coming from 2 different places, understanding 2 different ways of approaching it and seeing, that craft in their own light and what they get out of it. So I thought it was great. And I hope the audience that follows us on this podcast really enjoys it.
Well, we covered probably 20 to 30 topics within the world of online advertising. Obviously, we're not just talking Google Analytics Google PPC ads or things like that. It is pretty broad. But yeah, we talked about, AI created ads, their experience, tips and tricks with strategy. I'm kind of looking at my cheat sheet here. There's a long list of
misconceptions about the role.
Yep.
I really liked how we even delved into some of the ways that things are very traditional in this sense, like the things that people have been doing in ads since the beginning, as well as things that are brand new and people are adapting to in the role. So
yeah,
it was great.
Yeah, no, I think it was a fantastic one. It's pretty long, which is why we just wanted to make it a very specific ad specialist episode of the Challengtunity podcast. So that being said, drum roll, let's pass it over to the interview, and I hope you guys enjoy, because I think there's a lot of takeaways if you're interested in the world of ads.
All right. Well, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking to 2 very special advertising specialists. Both are from the ATRIUM team, but bring a wide variety of backgrounds in different areas what they specialize in, as well as what parts of advertising they're passionate about. So I'm going to welcome both our guests today. First, I'd like to introduce Hitakshi Shaw, who is an advertising specialist. Really comes from a love of the agency world. So I'm sure we're going to kind of learn where that obsession comes from, as well as following trends of big brands, very passionate about keeping on top of those global shifts in what makes up marketing these days. So we'll be able to cover that with Hitakshi. And I'd also like to introduce Leruo Legaching. And Leruo is also an advertising specialist on our team at ATRIUM. And he describes himself as a simple guy who loves ads. But in reality, I think he has a real good knack for understanding the connection between businesses and that more human level understanding that's really necessary for advertising. So look forward to seeing where our conversations go today.
Welcome to the podcast. Well, we did at the same time, Jordan.
Thank you.
We said the same line at the same time. Well, Jordan's absolutely correct. Both Leruo and Hitakshi are not only very, very good at their jobs, they are very analytical. They love to stay on top of trends and the things that are, let's just say, they like to be cutting edge in the world of being an online advertising specialist. But clients love them as well. Not only because they get them great results, but because they're very personal, they're very caring individuals, and that is a big part of why I think I was excited to have you guys on the podcast. So You guys excited? Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah,
Of course.
we're
Of
excited.
course.
Thanks
Thank you for
for
having
inviting
us.
us here. Yep, thank you.
You betcha.
Well, I know today we're going to be covering a whole bunch of different things. Advertising is a very big topic. So maybe we'll just kind of see where the conversation goes. But, one of the advantages, I think, in at least our agency is we get exposed to a whole bunch of different projects and a bunch of different industries and backgrounds and problems we have to solve for them. So, maybe I'll start with Hitakshi. You've kind of in the intro there been mentioning that you're very passionate about the agency world, and maybe that was one of the reasons you were attracted to it. Maybe you can give me some background about how that's applied to what you've been working on for the years in your career now.
That's kind of, I found myself really invested in, the agency world and digital marketing. Having said that, there's so much going out there. There are big companies outsourcing their work to big agencies and, collaborating for, let's say, like just doing advertising or just doing like traditional marketing, but they're all collaborating. There's such a big network that when we dive deep into this, we get to know like there's such a big network within each department of digital marketing. And I think like it's always interesting to know how people deal with, big clients, or when you hear about like big brands, how do you work with that? Like, how do you kind of talk to someone who is on the top level, who's like, not just the manager, but like, in the CEO or the CFOs? How do you deal with them? But I think that's kind of a fun point where you kind of understand the big game out there. And there's a lot of learning because you're not just doing what you're really good at, but you're also understanding that what you're already good at, there's always a best out of that. So I feel like there's really so much in the agency world, and everyone wants to make a name. Every agency out there is fighting against each other, trying to, have a bigger
No.
name, try to collaborate. No way, right? Like, but yeah, but it's so interesting. I just find it really interesting.
Yeah, no, that can also be the kind of double-edged sword, though. You've got, when you're client side, you
Hmm.
might be just working for one boss and one company, and you have to understand one audience and one industry.
Hmm.
But in an agency, at least in our agency, we don't specialize in any industry, so you get to see a whole bunch of
Yeah,
different things.
a whole
Maybe what are
bunch
some
of
of the
things. Yeah.
upsides and downsides of that for you?
Um, I've seen the upsides too many. It's one thing that you don't restrict yourself with one industry. You don't restrict yourself with just thinking about, okay, let's say how real estate industry is working. You just don't restrict yourself with that. You work with so many different industry. You work with finance, you work with health and services, you work with, restaurant and food. And it's some industries are like so informative and some are like so fun, but at the same time, you kind of realize one thing that I've realized is uh, not one thing does not fit for everything. One shoe does not fit all size, kind of thing. And that is something really good. That is something really good to take out of it. And you have to keep an open mind in it. You can't put something that worked in real estate under a different industry. But um, that's where people make error. That's where, I've made errors, where I've tried to think about like, I did something like this for the restaurant that I worked for. Maybe I can do this for this finance company, but guess what? No, you cannot do that. So these are like kind of pros and cons.
I love that you brought up the topic of errors, because that is the number one thing I love about digital marketing over, say, traditional marketing or
Hmm.
anything else. I mean, imagine you're that company that's spending tens of thousands of dollars and you're investing in, I don't know, that billboard on a certain street, or I don't know, at a hockey game there's a certain advertisement that you're putting on the boards or during a commercial break or whatever. All you're relying on is the viewership or the number of people going by that sign on their drive to work or whatever, right? It's pretty high risk. But with digital marketing, first of all, it's not a start it and it's
Yeah.
perfect thing. You have to refine, but it's in the data analysis of the successes and the failures that enable you to get yourself slowly to the point where you have a streamlined, funnel or whatever you want to call it, right? So
Yeah.
I love that you allow yourself to make mistakes, within a certain amount. I think it's important.
Yeah, and there's so many changes in the industry too. There's new technology, new techniques, new networks coming out there, and as much as data is fantastic, if you have it, you don't always have it. Sometimes you got to try something for the first time and see how it works. Now, Leruo, I know you've come from a little bit more e-commerce before us. You've had some experience in different elements. Now you've had a lot more exposure to a whole bunch of different things, including new technologies and new techniques that you hadn't worked with before. Like when you look at those things and you look at trends that are happening, like how do you approach a new opportunity?
I think one of the biggest things I always tell myself, like every day before work and after work, is you always have to be adaptable. I have to always adapt to what's next, what's happening. I always have to be on my feet, because the last thing a client wants is to find you flat-footed and you not know the answers or not even know what the next step is, right? So even when we have new changes, let's say one of the best things to do is just try and research, just keep yourself immersed or understanding what is going on. And also understanding you can take bits and pieces of other strategies and put them in different industries in itself, right? So being that adaptive and also just being quick on your feet, and also just taking time because sometimes people will think that marketing is always fast paced. Sometimes you just need to hit the brakes and just sit down and just figure it out. There's been many times where I've told Hitakshi first thing in the morning, like I had an idea in the shower. I know this is gonna work for this client. And it does work, right? Sometimes it's just one keyword that changes everything and it starts a whole new idea. And just being that adaptive, and sometimes you need to immerse yourself, sometimes you need to just step back and just figure out strategies, right? Just being able to pivot in that sense is always helpful. And I think also the way I think is always in the sports mentality, right? I've always played sports one way or another, is always being adaptable. Sometimes it's not always a one. Sometimes I learn things from Hitakshi and I'm like, take tidbits, see how I understand it, mold it in the way I know it, and then just put it to practice, right? If there's a mistake, there's a mistake, but step back, understand what ways to do it, and then step forth, right? Sometimes the client doesn't want 100% like, yeah, this is going to happen, right? Sometimes you just need to like either stroke their ego or just cool down the fire, right? And tell them that this is, you don't necessarily have to use, you just have to use certain buzzwords, right? You just be able to tell them like, be fine, right? One way or another. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this then. Would you say adaptability is a skill set or a mindset?
I'll say mindset.
Yeah.
Because if you're not practicing that throughout just your personal life and it's in you, it's pretty hard, because if you're just used to routine over and over again, it doesn't build that adaptability, right? It has to be in you. You have to be willing to push yourself to get out of your comfort zone one way or another, or sometimes even know when to step into your comfort zone, right? Because everybody thinks that there's certain tips and tricks that you can do to get yourself to be adaptable or learn different things, but sometimes you have to live it. You have to be able to have that mindset, live that way, to have those things in you and just ingrain them in you. Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah.
No, I think there's no one way to do advertising. That's been my experience, and I'm sure everybody loves those questions about like, oh, look, what's the winning strategy? How do you do this job and guarantee success? But I don't think that's something that you can really. Yeah, exactly. That'd be really easy for us and also horrible at the same time.
I'd sell so many books.
But we do all have our own secret recipes, the things that we like. Like, when somebody says, oh, what's the secret to your cheesecake? And they're like, well, actually, I put a little bit of pepper in there. And that's their thing. So what are your guys' secret recipes? Like, how do you stay on top of the ad strategy, and how do you view that? That's
good question. Are you guys going to arm wrestle over who's got the best strategy tip here?
No, we always collaborate. So I've learned so many things from Leruo. I'm not gonna lie, that things that I've not ever thought of, and same goes for him. I hope he says that, but yeah. But no, I feel like the two important things that I kind of play around with is the psychology. um, a lot of time I play around with the money aspect of it. If certain clients come up with certain budget, I really want to make sure that I'm kind of providing them a good return, and kind of using that money in a good way. So that is something that I kind of keep in mind, that okay, if certain client have certain budget, then how am I supposed to use it in a way that I can optimize them in a good way, can make them get some good business out of it. And the second is, how can I use a better platform for this strategy? And I'm a lot into creating strategies, so I kind of brainstorm a lot of ideas. I kind of think, I juggle with thoughts, like if I have to do this, is there something better I can do in order to use that money and in order to get a good return on investment for the client?
Mm-hmm.
So for
What
me,
I'm
two major thing is like optimizing it.
what I'm hearing from that is like it's really easy to, especially as an advertising specialist, you have other specialists that might focus just on one network, for example. Like they're really good at
Mhm.
TikTok ads or Facebook ads, but then you have a problem where maybe you're looking at every problem through that lens, and it's like the when you're a hammer, every problem's a nail kind of thing. So the that I think is a good skill to kind of think about different ways to solve problems with different tools in your toolkit.
One of the things
It's
that
really important.
it is one of the things that
Yeah.
I've seen with Hitakshi that she does that I do as well, just not in the same scale, is she goes into what's called our collaborative room, which is literally a room full of whiteboards. Every wall's a whiteboard, and she maps everything out with whiteboard markers or whatever, and she'll leave it there for days, which is kind of funny. But the reality is, you can see what's like in her brain on the whiteboard. But she maps every single thing out and sits back and thinks on it and chews on the marker, and then goes back to the whiteboard and writes a little bit more and sits back, chews on the marker. And just the digestion of what she's looking at helps her to refine. Sometimes visuals is a very important step in creating an ad strategy or social strategy or any kind of strategy.
I thought you were about to say that the digestion of the marker that she's chewing on is important.
We don't know. We don't know. We'll see.
I don't
I've
do
seen
that.
it on a couple.
I don't do
Now
that.
that we are short on markers, now that we talk about it.
How about you,
Oh,
Leruo, your
shit.
secret sauce?
My secret sauce is number one, when it comes to budgeting, I think of the money as mine. If I don't think it's mine, you tend to not take it, not serious is not the word that I'm looking for, but there's no
Like a sense of
putting
urgency.
yourself in those people's shoes. Yeah, there's no sense of urgency, right? So if I think of it, I look at it and I like putting myself in that, right? Hitachi's seen me a couple of times. I think even Jordan, where I like spewing everything on the table and getting all the ideas out. And sometimes I just don't need anybody to just give me feedback. I'll make all the budget strategies that I need, and I'll just be like, this makes sense, right? Because I need the reaffirming, basically all the information that I put on the table makes sense. It's not necessarily I need like a good job. I just need someone to be like, yeah, that makes sense. And then that's when I can pick everything and put it together. And then when it comes to strategies for, let's say, ads and everything, I kind of more in my head. I keep it all in my head. First of all, I think of the worst possible situation that could happen, and then the best. And then I try to figure out, okay, what's the happy medium that we can start off with, and what building blocks can we put on top of that? There was a wise man who told me that, take the surfer, and I'm always looking for the big waves, right? So it's always looking at things like that, just sitting down and just spewing everything that I need, and basically looking at the toolkit that I have and figuring out, okay, this is for this client, this is how they are, this is their personality, and just going from there, right? Putting myself in the person's shoes on like what they see as a success or a failure, and just putting putting my efforts into it, right? Trying everything that I can.
Now, if there's one thing I've learned about you over time is that you also take kind of personal development and learning crafts and becoming better, not only in the job, but personally. But what are some lessons you've picked up while being an ad specialist that, really impacted you, like things you've learned on the job or even personally that have changed how you view things?
I never thought there'd be a job that can actually keep my mind stimulated that much because I'm always thinking one way or another, right? So I've realized that I'm able to, one of the things I've had to do is definitely control like my thoughts and put them in buckets and ideas because I can come up with a billion ideas, but putting everything to practice is one of the things that has to be done in an agency, right? Anybody can sit down and come up with a strategy or this, that, but putting all those efforts into practice, it also takes an effort. Maintaining that same enthusiasm also takes effort, right? So one of the things that I have developed is that adaptability, right? Sometimes we come in and sometimes it's just it's a hard day to be able to get that motivation going sometimes. And sometimes you just have to add a little bit of a fun factor to it, right? In my head, sometimes I think, okay, the bounce rate is at 70%. I need to get it to 50. How are we going to do it? Let's make it a game. Mentally, let's make it a game. We'll keep checking it. We'll keep looking at the search terms one way or another. There has to be something, right? And sometimes, like I said, just sometimes I'll pull Hitakshi in and I'll say the craziest things. And sometimes it sticks and sometimes it doesn't, right? But but it's one of those things. It's collaboration. Yeah, it's collaboration. That's the biggest thing that I've learned in agency life. And
so Leruo was just talking about how, picking up new skills and learning to be a little bit more adaptable and kind of learning on the go, and how that can be quite dynamic. Analytics has become a bigger and bigger part of this job. I've seen this happen way back from the Mad Men days of advertising, which was all about creative direction and sitting in a room and drawing things and sketching ideas out, which is still there. But now you've also got responsibilities around understanding data and hacks things, and more recently even the transition to tag manager and analytics and how that impacts the growth and development of this skill set. So I know, Hitachi, you've seen that change in real time. How do you adapt to things like analytics and the importance of it?
I think I would say the secret sauce to this is kind of focusing on things that really matters in order to measure the success. And having said that, if you open analytics right now, you're going to see so many numbers. You're going to see so many options. You're going to be like, okay, what am I seeing here? Same thing with Google Ads itself, right? You see so many numbers all the time that even if you put certain, let's say for certain date range, and you'll be like, what am I supposed to focus on? But if you have that strategy in your head that, okay, this is what I'm looking into. I'm looking into how many people did actually visit my site. That is something my focus is. And once you kind of understand what you want to focus on, that helps you analyze these numbers even in a better way and kind of understand so many numbers out there. Even for someone who knows analytics or someone who knows Google Ads, it's kind of sometimes becomes overwhelming to understand these many numbers. But once you know what you want to focus on, once you know that this matters to you at this point, then I think this is it becomes really helpful. And I feel analytics has really good pros of like understanding the user journey from the point where you want them to click on your ad, go on your website, and okay, they're browsing the website, they're going on this and this landing page. You can go back to your client saying like, they're spending more time on this landing page. Did you make sure that this has all the information that it needs? So it gives you so many information that are really helpful, not just for advertiser, but also for the client, in order to improve their business, in order to improve that, user experience overall.
I think that buyer's journey is a great framework to use in a lot of different disciplines, advertising especially. And I think you're bang on. That's a good tool to pick a point of reference in that journey, then look at data that relates to that specific point and look out from there. And you can look backwards, you can look forwards,
Yeah.
but it gives you somewhere a frame of reference to start from.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's also number game. So it always has been numbers of, when I got into advertising, uh, I did not know it's going to be so many numbers. I'm
Would
not
would
gonna
you
lie. I
would
was,
would you go as
yeah.
far as saying that how well you are, or how would I say that? The better the advertising specialist, the better they understand how to utilize analytics. Or the other way
Um,
around, the better that an ad specialist understands analytics, the better they can be at their job. Would you say
I
that's
think that one.
yes.
Yeah.
yeah?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Second one.
Numbers, I feel like I've kind of believed in this. Numbers don't lie, unless you have wrong tagging. But numbers don't lie. You have to follow the data. You have to follow it. Like you have to believe in it. There's always something wrong, or there's always something really right that you're doing, which is working really good for you. There's always something that's actually not working good for you. So for an advertiser, in order to understand these numbers, you need to be smart enough to like understand like, okay, if these numbers are going down since last 2 weeks, why is it happening? If I'm not able to understand those numbers, then I'm not going to be successful with the campaigns that I'm going to be doing.
What's your take on that comment, LaRue? On the better you understand analytics, the better the ad specialist will be.
Yeah, because sometimes success is measured in different ways, right? And that can always be seen in the data, where maybe bounce rates are through the roof, and you may not be understanding why is that, but sometimes like Jordan was mentioning about the buyer's journey is maybe something's wrong with the landing page. The ad itself can be perfect, but if
Yeah.
they're coming on to a website or a landing page that isn't helping with the user experience, most people will just leave, right? And that's certain things that it's always the little details that always count. It's always the detail. And it's also part and parcel with the user experience, right? We always talk about just the ad side, making things look pretty, make them sound pretty, but it's also sometimes you have to roll up your sleeves and look at the data. You sit down, look at the numbers, and there's always a trail somewhere, somehow, right? And it's sometimes you're working from the buyer's perspective, sometimes you're looking from the advertiser's perspective, but there's always a trail somewhere that will show the weak points in there.
Well, and Jordan, I'll throw it over to you next, because the reality when we talk about analytics, we instantly in our brain go Google Analytics, right? But a lot of the time it's things like heat mapping, videos of users, and the actual user experience that's occurring on the website. So I think, given that you kind of also oversee the CRO part of our ads team, I'd love to throw it over to you and just have you comment on that. I think it's essential.
Analytics good. No, but seriously, there's a lot of data out there that you can measure just about anything digitally these days, which is fantastic. But like Hitakshi was referencing earlier, you can also get lost in that. Like it's a forest of just numbers. It looks like the Matrix and just things streaming down in front of you. And unless you know the context of it, you're kind of lost. So the context is the important skill set to learn, is to know what these numbers mean, what they represent in the real world, because on a sheet or a spreadsheet, they're kind of meaningless. So these tools and these software, they add up. Some of them specialize in different areas, and you get different pieces of data, and you've got to learn how to connect those dots and where they're relevant and where they're not. Sometimes you might make a conclusion with data alone that really doesn't map to reality. So heat mapping is a great way to actually check raw data. So you might see a high bounce rate, but when you actually do a heat map, or you do a visitor recording of that page, you can kind of go like, well, why is that bounce rate? Is it because the design is bad? Is it because the button doesn't work? Those are two different solutions you would have to come to. You could either redesign that page because you thought it was bad design, when really it's just like people are trying to click this button, I can tell, but they're not going anywhere afterwards. Maybe check to make sure the button works. Oh, it doesn't work. Maybe I don't need to redesign the whole page. I just fixed the button. So, same numbers that got you to start that investigation, but different tools made you completely change how you might approach the solution to it.
Well, let's pivot slightly, because there's an adaptation and an evolution, maybe is a better word, to the advertising industry right now, where we have things like AI and out of home ads, and live ads that are hitting bus stops and things like that. You guys are laughing because I know, Hitakshi, this is a huge passion of yours. So I'm going to give you the microphone for a minute. Where are we today, and where do you see this going when it comes to the impact of real people in the day-to-day world?
As you would say, there are two things here.
I do say that.
One is we're in a we're in a large transition stage right now where there's a lot thrown at us as of now. When I say a lot, I mean a lot that is coming up. We see the wave changing. We're seeing the shift in the industry. We also see that a lot of companies, a lot of agencies are trying to keep up with it. And we also see that a lot of agencies are not keeping up with it. But I feel like things are going to change in a couple of years coming up. When you say out of home ads, there are big players out there who are kind of putting their foot down in that area, and they're doing really amazing. When you see those augmented reality ads on Times Square, or all those digital billboards, and it's a big thing on a global scale, where I come across a couple of ads coming in Japan, or in US, and they're really fancy, and it's kind of a merger, I would say, with traditional marketing that used to be there. Those billboards, you used to see that billboard, you used to remember, oh, that corner has that billboard. Well, things are going to change. That billboard is going to change every minute. It's going to change every hour, because you have the control now. The advertiser is going to have live control over what the ad is going to show up at the afternoon. Maybe at the night, it's going to be a concert ad going up there. So things are going to change, and I feel the out of home is going to be interesting. It's also going to be involved with all the streaming services that's going on, and there's going to be a lot of collaboration happening, where people are, because everyone has a smart TV now. They're going to come across ads, they like it or not, but I feel like it's a smart way of targeting audience, because you're trying to play with the psychology of them. People are going home. Everyone is stuck in traffic. They're slowing down at this, particular street. Well, what are they going to do while sitting and looking at the billboards? So,
Well,
playing with psychology.
It's funny you say that, because it's all based on information and data. It's all inputs and outputs.
Yeah.
So, everyone has a phone. People can tell that traffic is slowing down. You go in your Google Maps, you can avoid those routes. That's data that is accessible through APIs to companies who have digital billboards. No different than your smart TV. It knows when you're watching TV. It knows how often you're watching. It knows what shows you're watching, and so on and so forth. All that data that your Netflix or Apple or whatever is grabbing is going somewhere. Yeah. So it's wild. It's not just advertisers throwing things in front of people. It's the collection of data that gives us specific KPIs that enable us to target audiences based on things that we're receiving for relevancy for the audience. It's fun.
Yeah, and it's important.
And scary.
It's so much fun. It's so much fun to know that those things. I try to target, let's say families. If I'm doing certain ads and I'm trying to target couples or family people, my ad shows up on a cartoon channel. My ad is going to show up on YouTube channel, which has games for kids and videos for kids. Yeah. But I know that their family is there. People who are who have family, who are a couple, they're watching this with their kids. So, I get so many information from this data that, we have now. And I feel like this is going to go immense going forward, with AI coming in, and with Google making so many changes, with digital world making so many changes.
Yeah. And I could see things becoming a little bit more personalized too. The ads are just going to be more personalized, because I keep seeing Uber Eats ads, and I'm like, they keep sucking me in, and I'm like, whoever's doing this, they're doing it real well.
Well, how many?
Yeah.
How I
Yeah.
love watching Instagram, reels or whatever, where these women are joking, but it's not a joke. They're going to their husbands or their boyfriends' cell phones and they're talking about engagement rings
Oh
and
yeah.
best I don't know, products of this specific type near me, and they're trying to influence the buying behavior of their boyfriends. I mean, it's going to happen. You're going to be sitting there watching Netflix, and all of a sudden, you're going to have diamond ring commercials showing up, and they're going to be nudging. Like, see, the universe is telling you.
The one I find
Yeah.
really interesting now is the whole AI created ads, because
Oh yeah.
I think it's gonna be a nice, interesting battle. This is where I can nerd out a little bit. Where I think it's gonna be a much more vicious battle because now there's money in it, right? Think Google is going to have a couple tricks up their sleeves when it comes to indexing some of these things and actually putting a hold on maybe some of the ads that are generated maybe from outside competitors when it comes to um, ads that are generated maybe not using their AI platforms that they've recently announced. So that should be an interesting one on that end, which I'm keeping a close eye on that to see how that's going to affect Google Ads on that. Yeah,
Everything's going to change.
yeah, yeah.
Now, I know we've talked a lot about technology here and the shift in the industry, but some things are also still very true that have always been there. I know this is a very personal human business. Like understanding psychology and elements like that is still fundamental to being good at this job. How do you both apply bits of psychology into the work that you do?
Let's start with you, Leruo.
Um,
I
yeah.
actually have an interesting story. There was a jewelry company that we're running ads for, and we're running Facebook ads. But when it came to targeting, I was torn either targeting men or targeting women because you can target the women because it's a product that is going to be more centered around them. But when it comes to the men, they're the ones making the purchase one way or another. It's such a big event on that scale, right? So sometimes it's the psychology of understanding maybe who's making the final decision instead of who is maybe just looking at and maybe browsing the product on that end, right? So it's always a push and pull type thing where you have to kind of understand that, okay, maybe if it's jewelry, depending on what it is, if it's wedding or engagement rings, maybe I'll be more weighted to men because they're the ones making the purchase. Whereas if it's like collections and maybe little smaller items that aren't as big ticket items, you can a little bit more broader or more centered to women on that end, right? Just because of it's such a big decision to make, right? And that decision falls on a party that's probably not looking for these things. It's only the only when it comes at a certain time, right? So you kind of have to also put yourself in that person's shoes, which it got a little I got a little nervous in there where you have to wedding rings and figure out, okay, would I make this item and stuff like that. So it's psychology plays a really really big part when it comes to ads and definitely when it comes to targeting. Yeah.
How about you, Hitakshi?
Yeah. That's Uh, one thing that LaRue said was like this psychology thing about, who are you targeting to, who's going to be the end buyer to it is the important stuff. Uh, but the point that, I really want to highlight is the location of the target audience. I feel like having done advertising globally now, doing some ads in US, doing some ads in UK, I feel like, the location also affects the user experience and the behavior of these audience. Like I've seen a couple of areas in different locations where the ads won't work because people are too busy. People are just too busy with work. They're not
Yeah.
they're not the suitable audience. So I feel understanding where they're located is super important. You can spend thousands of money in an area which is not populated, which is not going to actually convert because they don't have logistics available to them. They're not going to
Yep.
make the decision. They're going to come across to your ad, but well, they're not going to have the delivery in like next 3 days. So what are they going to do? They're just going to go to the local store and just going to buy it. So I feel like understanding those tiny bits of the location importance is really important to invest your money sensibly. And, just understanding if I'm doing, I could say that, oh, I want to expand my business in other province, but well, how settled are you in that province? Is your audience even there? Do you have a competition which is really good over there? So just understanding the target location is really important to also understand the psychology of the audience that you have.
Now, I know we've covered quite a bit here over the last several minutes here talking about the life of an advertising specialist and how that applies. And this is actually fairly new for our podcast, having, these specialist deep dives and
Yeah.
It's really entertaining to both see different perspectives. And for the first time, we've had two here at the same time. So this is really an interesting dynamic. But one thing we did before that was quite fun was looking at things that might be misconceptions or things that are not quite true, or might be, people think about this particular role or what it's like to be in this role. But maybe we can cover some of those. And I know, Chris, you're on the front lines quite often. You get exposed to some of these
true.
when you're talking to new clients.
That's true. What a lot of people don't know watching this podcast is, although Leruo is an advertising specialist, he's also the producer / editor of the Challengtunity podcast. So this is where Leruo, to call this a new segment called Advertising Misunderstandings. And we'll have I don't know, maybe we'll create like a whoosh or a thing here, like some kind of like, I don't know, new segment. Da-da-da. But,
or a really advanced animation that you can maybe handcraft that gets right on top of here that, yeah.
No pressure. So we kind of thought there was 3 misconceptions that we hear every single week, specifically from prospects, potential clients that are talking to us, wanting us to do ads. And we often have to re-educate them on certain things. I'm going to just make a statement. Obviously, they're all false, but I'm going to make a statement, and I would love to hear your take on it. So you ready? Number 1.
Yeah, we are.
Advertising is only a short-term strategy. Ooh, we got the big X. All right, no. Leruo, why? Why is advertising only? Why are you saying it's not only a short-term strategy?
It's also dependent on the industry you're in.
Yeah.
If, let's say, you are in fashion, it could be your only strategy to have a short-term strategy, in the sense of maybe you always have sales, you always have the seasonality when it comes to your industry on that end. So it's all dependent on your industry, but as a whole, I think a short-term strategy wouldn't benefit your business as a whole, because you also need longer-term ads that just even give brand awareness on just that scale, right? Because people need to know who you are. But if every time you're chopping and changing different strategies, it's not going to help you at all.
I always tell people that it's all about measurement. So if you understand your cost per acquisition and you know the lifetime value of your customer, it can not only be a short-term, it can be a mid and long-term strategy if you've locked that down to the point where you're just printing money. It might not be, the marketing channel or the part of your marketing mix that has the highest, conversion rate, or might not have the highest value. But the reality is, if it's making you money, it can also be a long-term strategy. All right, let's go to the next one. I'll throw this one to you, Hitakshi. Top placement means higher conversions. True or false?
Nah.
Why?
Again.
Why? Rip it apart.
Again. I feel like people are smart now. They're not always on, edge on just clicking the first thing that they see. They're smart enough to scroll. They're smart enough to see that, oh, this is an ad. I don't want to click on this because I'm going to be, barged in with a lot of ads on my Instagram and Facebook. I feel like if you are being more relevant and if you have the right information that they're looking for, and if you kind of have done it really well, even if you are on the third or fourth, they're going to click on you. They're going to click on you because you touch the exact point that they want you to touch on. And obviously, people do fight to be on the top of the page. They always want to be ahead of the competition, which is correct. There's no harm in doing that. Obviously, you want to be in the front of the eye, but if you're not providing the right message, even being on the top of the page, it's not going to give you any results or any clicks. You have to kind of um, understand what are you presenting, what are you giving. People are getting smart now, so people know what they're looking for. They do not want to waste their time anymore.
Well, they've always been smart. They're just more educated. Hitakshi, just saying.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else hear the
Okay.
thunder? Like, I'm sure our thought leaders think
I
that,
know.
or our thought leaders,
Can't
our
hear a thing.
listeners. Oh, there's like thunder rattling the building right now. This one will be for the two of you. You guys can arm wrestle this.
Okay.
Run pay-per-click ads only if you rank poorly. Organically, I guess that would be. Should you run
I
PPC
think
ads only if you rank poorly?
no,
Of course
no.
no.
There's
Of course no.
no, you don't want to do that.
I mean,
You
here's
don't
the
want
thing
to do that.
I've always thought about this is let's say you're targeting very specific keywords and you are dominating organically in all of those. You're ranked number 1, number 2. Let's just say number 1 for the sake of this discussion. If you also are running an ad, you have double the impressions, double the exposure. You're also grabbing a larger percentage of the screen. Psychologically, what happens with individuals who are searching is they instantly might skip over the ad, but the second that they see you, they've seen you twice and they think you're a major player. They psychologically think that you deserve to be there and they instantly are going to click on it. And that's the misconception.
Also,
Go for it.
mhm. Also, like if I think about the same thing that you said from the algorithm point of view, if my website is doing amazing, if I'm ranking really good organically, I'm putting all the important keywords in my SEO, and then if I'm running ads, I don't have to pay too much to rank on the top of the page because algorithm is going to know that, this website has everything the user is asking for. My bidding, for people who don't know this, but for when you try to for a keyword, you're kind of bidding for that with other competition out there. So when you're trying to do bidding and my website has a good quality score, I don't have to bid that much and I'm just going to be on the top of the page. You're saving money over there. So I feel like that's just how you play around with the algorithm. That's why anytime we do ads, we also make sure that the client has a good website. They have all the relevant information because relevance is a major key to be on the top of the page organically or in terms of like inorganic, just being there as a paid ad.
Yeah, and I think from a strategy level, like obviously I know where that question comes from. There's a very common strategy to use advertising as a bridging towards getting organic. So if you're working on your organic ranking, it's obviously the end goal to be number 1. But if you're starting from way in the back, your 10th page, it's a slog to get all the way to the top of the first page. That could be months or longer before you see that happen. So putting all that effort in and putting that investment in can be even more difficult if you don't have business coming in at all in the meantime while you try to get there. So, paying for the PPC spot can be a great way to do that. That being said, once you do get the top, that's where all the things we were just talking about come into play. You change that strategy. It's not about, filling that gap. It's more about like taking up the visual real estate, getting more market share, preventing your competition from being there, maximizing the value of that asset with your advertising strategy. And sometimes it's not the best idea to have it there, but it's certainly not a bad idea to have it there.
Well, I think you bring up a good point, Jordan, because when you are the dominant player in the market, you've captured majority of the market, like from a percentage perspective, right? You've got most of the market share. So in order for you to grab another 1%, it is those small little tactics that's going to do that. So if you're paying for a top placement in a PPC ad, what you're also doing is you're ensuring that your competition is not. right? They're in the second. And the third is now pushed down to the bottom or whatever the case might be. So it can be a part of your strategy. Well, I know it doesn't feel like it, but it's been about 45 minutes of talking about ads. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh, wow.
Well, Leruo, Hitakshi, we want to say thank you. I know we see you a lot, but not in the context of the Challengtunity podcast. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time here today, and hopefully we'll have both you or one of you at different times back on the show in the future.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it was
Thank you for having us.
really, yeah, this was really good. This was we can do this all day, as Captain America would say. I can do this all day, but
Does he say that?
he does all the time.
Yeah.
I can do this all day. But yeah, me and Leruo can talk about ads, and even Jordan, and then comes the strategy, and Chris, you too. We can talk about this for like so long and long and long, but I feel like we've covered so many important things here, and we really like the questions that you threw on us. But yeah, we had a good time. Thank you for having us.
Awesome.
And
Thanks, guys.
As the ads team, we always like signing out by saying one thing: ads are not on fire.
There it is.
There it is.
They're
Mic drop,
not.
Leruo. Wow. Well, that was a lot that we covered in that interview. Thanks to Hitakshi and Leruo from our team. Obviously, they spent a lot of hours, this week talking about topics they wanted to cover, and obviously recording and all that kind of stuff. Very much appreciated. Hopefully, anyone who's listening to that or to this episode sees a lot of value in it as well. Personally, I loved hearing a lot about things like out-of-home ads and things like that are not necessarily on the cuff of what we talk about at the agency level every single day. How'd you find that it went, Jordan? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying new things here at the podcast, getting different types of perspectives from different groups of people. Still trying to make sure that it's relevant to business owners or marketing professionals that might be really following us on a regular basis, but giving different takes from different perspectives, I think, is a really important thing for us to try and do. So again, if you're going to be joining us on the podcast regularly or sharing this with friends, this is a good opportunity to give us some feedback as well. And as the audience grows. Speaking of which, if you want to obviously subscribe or follow us on any of your podcatchers, we were on Spotify and iTunes and all the big ones. You also be sure, of course, to follow us on YouTube if you like video. We do record these in video if you're hearing it, so you can get to see our questionably attractive faces. I don't know if that's what you're into.
That's not for us to say, Jordan. That's for the
I know it's
audience
not.
to
It's
say.
not. That's for the comment section, and they're brutal. But we do want to be making sure that if you are following us, comment, share, anything you can do. There's bells to click and all that stuff. Be sure you do it.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you on the next podcast episode. Cheers.